Should we introduce the pod?
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
introduce the
let's
pod.
get started.
Welcome to the Tired Pod for 2025,
New.
2025
All new.
edition of
All new
All
for
New.
2025.
We're burning it all down. We're leaving it all behind. But this is still the car podcast for people who understand that cars are bad. And I'm Peter, and I'm joined by Rory and Maddie.
What's up?
And
Hey.
Hey.
and we're gonna keep this going into the new year and beyond.
Do you want to do resolutions before we get into the main topic of the day?
Sure.
I've been trying to consume more media this year. That's one of my big plans for the year. I wouldn't say it's a resolution, but
Well, I think consuming more media, I think is
that's the key.
perfect place to start.
Yeah.
What other resolutions do we have this year?
Peter, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like my resolution for you, Franklin Bruno, who I played music with in the '90s and have occasionally played music with since. Friend of mine back in the day. His resolution every year, which I thought was very funny, was just be more famous.
Mm-hmm.
And so for years I just kind of stole that and just said, okay, that's going to be my resolution. It's just in 2001 I'm going to be more famous or whatever. And then at a certain point I realized I didn't like being as famous, and I don't remember at what point that was, but whenever that was, like I changed it, and my resolution since then has been be less famous. And but I feel like I've kind of succeeded in that, and
Big swing for that one.
yeah, it might be time to flip it again, and flip back to be more famous.
Yeah.
So we'll see. As far as automotive resolutions go, because I just got the alert from Geico that my insurance is going to get renewed, and this is an infuriating thing that had only. So when I left the Saab wagon that blew up with the guy down in North Carolina several years ago now, who was gonna try to source a new motor for it. I've had a few interactions, like maybe once a year or whatever. I'll call him, just say, "Hey man, still interested? If you can, oh okay." But the thing is, with New York, if you have a car that is registered and there's a plate on it, you cannot, like, there's no such thing as like in California you can do like a what do you call it, like a non-op.
Yeah.
Right. New York doesn't do that. You have to pay full registration, and you have to keep a car, like you have to have proof of insurance on a car, even if you're not fucking driving it. And so for a few years it was just kind of like, whatever, it's just like fucking $200 a year on the insurance. I don't give a shit. But it's like, with both insurance going up and my income going down, like suddenly, and the thing is, the fucking and the only way that you can get out of that is to physically return the plates. Like you have to fucking mail the actual license plates to the New York DMV, and then that's kind of like, then they'll take it off. If you let the insurance lapse, you will get a fucking notification from the state that, like, if you don't, they'll fine you, and if you don't cover it within X number of days, like there's all these like just crazy, you'll get your fucking license suspended and shit, and it's just like, it's such fucking it's so infuriating. And so when I the last time I talked to this guy, I was like, look dude, I just need the fucking license plates. Can you can you just mail me the license plates? I don't, it's like, look, there's zero urgency, as long as, with getting this car back, but it's like I do need these fucking license plates, and of course, I mean that was more than a year ago, and of course he never did shit. But it's like, but now it's like our insurance is kind of a lot now, just for like the two cars plus this stupid Saab that I haven't seen in like 3 or 4 years or whatever it is, and it's like, yeah, I need to call this guy up and just be like, dude, I need you to send me these fucking license plates right now, or I'm going to report this car stolen, and I'm going to tell them where it is because I'm not paying insurance on this fucking thing anymore.
I mean, it's that or field trip.
Wait, I was going to say, so is that the resolution?
Yeah. So the resolution is to call the guy.
Okay.
And also, and I guess the other resolution is one way or another, I think 2025 is the year that the SPG gets out of the driveway. It's just something needs to happen. Something's got to give.
Something does need
Something's
to
got to change.
Yeah.
Oh no, not like this. Rory's scheming.
So those are my two Saab resolutions.
Nice.
Yeah.
That actually
I don't know
dovetails
that I have.
with a couple of
I
mine.
don't know that I have any others.
My big one: consume more media, more screen time.
More screen time. I love it.
Yeah, more screen time.
Good, barely ever spit take from Peter. Very good.
The other I did have all either get all the cars running this year or sell them.
Nice.
So
Ooh.
all cars must run and drive this year, or
I like
they're
that.
gone. I yesterday walked out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's basically what mine is too, with at least with respect to the SPG. Yeah.
Yeah, I walked out yesterday and I was walking around the barn area and I was like, I'm going to take a picture of this and put it on Craigslist right now and sell it. And like walked by the pickup and I was like, I'm taking a picture of this and I'm going to put it on Craigslist right now. And then I was like, I'm going to take a picture of the 911 and put it on Craigslist right now. And then I was like, this might be considered a red flag to certain people. This is red flag behavior. So I was like, let's take 10 seconds and reconsider the sale of all my large personal belongings stage. So where I ended up was we're going to get the cars running or sell them. Which seems way more yellow flag.
Gives you something to do.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. That's healthy behavior. That's a good that's a good goal.
Yeah.
I think that will like alleviate a lot of my kind of like latent. There's like latent bad feelings about like projects that aren't done. You know, like just kind of low level like disappointment in oneself that is like constantly. And I think that's a big cause of it, like going out and seeing the Willies and seeing the 911 and that kind of stuff. It's just like, oof, you gotta take care of that, buddy. That's not healthy. So that's the big one. Obviously, do not violate the number one rule of Tired Pod, which we don't need to reiterate.
The one we all know.
The famous rule of Tired Pod. I think that's it. I think that's all I got. Rest of it, I think, will probably take care of itself. What do you got, Maddie?
My list is promo the pod more. I need to hit the books more, get better at audio stuff. There's some things that I still need to like really nail down that I don't feel as confident about.
Good. It's good enough. Yeah.
Never. No,
I think it's fine.
I'm gonna be.
You can cross that one off.
I think that the one consistent feedback that I get from the pod is that it sounds really good.
Really?
So, yeah.
Aw. That's
Everybody's
so nice.
like, first of all, it sounds great.
Oh. Well, just wait because they won't even.
I'm gonna
Once I figure out what the hell compression is and what it's doing when I put the little ratio in, that will be exciting.
We're going Albini mode on the pod.
Yes. It's gonna be good. Get out of New Jersey. That's a big one.
Yeah.
By hook or by crook, get the hell out of here. What else? That's it. That's pretty good. I feel like that's my priorities right now. And then if other things should materialize, we've already got our plan to get me to a race finally this year.
Mm-hmm.
Go down to Watkins Glens. That'll be fun.
Easy. Yep.
Yeah, got my ticket, so that'll be super fun. I guess just like, I don't know, just keep figuring out what else I can keep doing to do more stuff for the pod and keep it rocking and rolling.
It's good.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
I think all of we have good goals that are like attainable, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important to not set your aims too high.
Yeah.
For New Year's resolutions, you know, you gotta be realistic.
Yeah. It's like get in shape, and it's like, or it's like you know, those kind of vague like what does that mean type goals, you know? Just try to avoid
Sure.
those.
Right.
I'm gonna work on my wellness.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a better father. Probably not. Not likely.
Damn it, you guys! Those are my other two.
You know. Well,
No.
What, work on wellness and be a better father?
Yeah.
I can't imagine you being a better father. That's talk about not attainable. You're right at the top already.
yeah, cool kid.
Yeah. You want to talk about the other big thing we have to look forward to in 2025?
What's that, Rory?
The IMSA season.
Yeah.
It's starting.
Let's do it.
What's the
in
Peter?
like 2 weeks.
You were telling me about the big story for the IMSA season when I was over, right? You've got
Yeah. Well. The big headline addition this year is Aston Martin is bringing their prototype race car, the Valkyrie, to both IMSA and WEC, the World Endurance Championship, which is the kind of international equivalent of IMSA. And yeah, it's a very very sexy and dramatic car and it's different from everything else that's competing in that class because it is not a hybrid, and it is a normally aspirated, which means not turbocharged, V12. So it's gonna sound pretty sick.
It does. It sounds incredible. There are videos of it online. You should Google it, listeners. It sounds fucking unreal. It's going to be very, very fun.
hell yeah.
Yeah. And have you been following the scuttlebutt, Rory, about, you know, when they ran it at Daytona a month or two ago, kind of as part of its homologation stuff, it was wearing some kind of WEC spec mufflers, that because I guess there's noise restrictions in Europe and other parts of the world, and so it did sound good, but it was a little bit muted, and people did comment on it, and the IMSA people kind of made it clear to to the Aston Martin people. It's like, yeah, you can take those fucking things off. We don't want those here.
This is America, Jack. Crank it up.
we want it loud as shit. Because the thing is, this car already exists in road legal form. Weirdly enough, This is another thing that makes this car unique. Is that
you can buy one?
It's not strictly a race car. I mean, you can buy one if you have like $3 or $4 million or something,
and pre-ordered it 5 years ago or whatever it was.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But these cars in road legal spec, I mean, they sound unreal. I mean, it's just like this banshee wail of a V12, and there's no reason that should not be the case on a fucking racetrack, right?
Yeah.
And this, as you say, this is America. We don't do mufflers on race cars.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's the one good thing about us. Yeah, let's talk about IMSA. This is something that I've been kind of itching to talk about, kind of in
Yeah.
in a big. This is let's make this a kind
Primer.
of a primer, as we say. Um, as just kind of an introduction to this type of racing for people who might be unfamiliar with it, and what
Yes.
makes it unique and special, and really fucking compelling and cool.
And I think most importantly, like we're gonna tell you how to get excited about IMSA and how to follow it as a fan. I think this year, and like the end goal of this to me should be here's not only here's what's cool about IMSA, here's how it works, but like here's your entry point to like finding a team to root for or finding a thing to be excited about, so that you can actually watch some races and like get into this. Because like as far as like weird sports to be obsessed with, like cricket is you got cricket is out there. You could be obsessed with the guys who watch the big soccer leagues in Europe.
Rory, I followed professional bowling obsessively for roughly 2 years.
Bass fishing, rugby. There's all kinds of shit you could get, but almost none of it is as like I liked their old stuff as following IMSA. So like, if you're looking for a cool thing to be very excited about that nobody else cares about, IMSA's your jam. And actually, that's not true. There's a ton of IMSA fans now, but among your likely friend group, you will be probably the only one. So
Yeah. Well, and as far as like I like the old stuff goes, I mean the thing that is really cool about IMSA is it has a very cool history, and there's a lot of like neat stuff in the past. But what is happening right now is the best shit that has ever been happening in it, and
Yes.
and so this is your opportunity to be a spectator to something that 30 years from now, a generation or two generations from now, people are going to look back on and be like, holy fuck, could you imagine like how cool it would have been to be at some of those races, or this is kind of
we'll be passing notes between our cages and our holding pens and be like, man, wasn't IMSA great in 2025?
exactly. Yeah. So what is it? It's the International Motor Sports Association. Is that what it stands for? Yeah. And it is multi-class sports car endurance, mostly racing. And what does that mean? When we talk about multi-class, this means that you have a bunch of different sports cars of varying types and kind of speed levels, and they're all on a racetrack at once. And so you kind of have like within each race, there are multiple races going on. Not every car is competing against every other car. However, they have to deal with every other car on the racetrack as they are, battling the people that they are competing against. So that makes it really fun and exciting, because you've got traffic, you've got faster cars, you got slower cars, you got guys trying to stay out of people's way, you've got faster guys coming through. So it's a little bit like like the school bus races on the figure eight tracks,
Yeah.
sometimes.
It's you could also think of it as like your commute. If you had the fastest car in the world and everybody else had like normal cars, and you were trying to get to work really fast and you had to like go through traffic to get there, it's that dynamic is present. Like everybody's obviously in fast cars, but like there are in the lower classes, there are cars that you could conceivably, again, not us, not Tired Pod listeners, but a person, a well-heeled dentist, for example, could go buy a Porsche 911 or a Corvette and have like roughly a similar type of car to what's on the track in the lower classes. And then in the upper classes, you have like really, I think you very easily say like the pinnacle of like go fast technology in North America. Like these are the fastest, most technologically advanced cars that are racing uh, with regularity in North America. The prototype classes. So it's the word or it's speed differential. It's like the difference between a really fast car and the dentist driving the 911. It's like a very interesting dynamic. It's like another really tortured metaphor would be like if you had one NBA court and the Lakers were playing the Celtics, and then there was also a high school game happening on the same court at the same time.
Or college, yeah, but yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, this is the thing that yeah, it's there's so many kind of layers and levels of interest. So that's one of them, right? You have cars of varying potential speeds. You have drivers of varying talent
Ability.
levels, because it's a mix of professional drivers and amateur drivers. We could talk more about that later. And you also have it is not just one driver versus one driver. You have teams of drivers because many of these races are endurance events, so meaning that it's a race that lasts longer than just like a standard, like a NASCAR race or an IndyCar race where it's a set, number of laps or miles or time. Some of these races go 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. So obviously there's you have a relay race aspect to it. So you have teams of drivers who have to share the same car, and drivers of sometimes varying ability within a team, oftentimes varying sizes, just physical stature, and preferences, like in terms of how you like a car set up. So there's this whole kind of additional human element that I think is really fascinating, because these drivers within a team, it's not just like, like you against the world. It's like you have to know how to kind of balance your preferences, for how you like, because different race car drivers prefer a car that's set up differently, that suits their driving style. Some guys like a car that's a little edgier. Some of them like it a little safer. Some guys might want a little more oversteer. Some might prefer more understeer, whatever. And these are all kind of setup decisions. But it's like when you're sharing a car among multiple people, like everybody kind of has to compromise a little bit. And so they have to like learn how to kind of, express their preference, but also kind of accept a compromise. And also there's a lot of communication that goes on, just obviously about like the condition of the track, or the other drivers on track, the other cars, whatever's going on. There's just a whole bunch more factors going on than in most more kind of traditional forms of racing, where it's just like one guy in one car, and everybody's just trying to go as fast as they can. So all of those things together, I feel like make it kind of just endlessly. And there's always just more wrinkles, and it's the kind of thing where you can follow this stuff obviously without knowing any of this shit, and just like watch the cool cars going around. But it's definitely the kind of thing that as you learn more about the cars, learn more about the teams, individual drivers, whatever, it is definitely the kind of thing that the deeper you get into it, the more cool little facets you discover, and more cool things there are going on to see. So yeah, the season, which, I mean, the reason that we're talking about it now is because it's January. The season starts at the end of this month in Daytona with the what's I guess it's now called the 24 hours.
The
Well,
row
there's
before the
the
24.
right. So in a
Right.
couple of weeks, yeah. So the first race of the year is the 24 hours of Daytona, Rolex 24, whatever you want to call it, 24-hour race at Daytona Speedway. Um, what is it called? Is it Daytona International?
Yeah.
It definitely has international in the name.
Daytona International
Daytona
Speedway.
International Speedway. Yeah.
DIS.
Yeah.
At
Which-
DIS updates on Twitter.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about before. It's a big, huge stadium, kind of big oval racetrack that was built in the early '60s by by the France family, and yeah, which is kind of most famous for being the venue for the Daytona 500, which is like the kind of the Super Bowl of NASCAR, right? And so it's this kind of tri-oval, really high banked racetrack. But they also, when they built it, they built kind of an infield course too. So this is what they use for the sports car races, and so it's kind of a mix of kind of high banked speedway and then like kind of twisty stuff where the cars aren't just turning left. And that is a 24-hour race, and that's kind of like, I mean, a little bit like in NASCAR where you start off with the biggest race of the season. In IMSA, it's the same story. It has been for a long time. But so that's the first race. It goes through all the way through until October and finishes at Road Atlanta, which we've also talked about. I got to go to that for the first time this last year. Thank you very much, Rory. It's funny, you know, I it occurred to me that it's like, I think the last race that you sent me to before that one might have been when you sent me to Le Mans in 2019, which kind of portended the end of Auto Week. The end of your tenure at Auto Week. And I just, like, I wonder, it's like, oh, is that why Rory sent me on that? Because he knew this was going to be like, you know, his last chance to like do me a solid. And
Yeah, I mean that is certainly, that was like in my mind. And I think there's a lot of stuff. It's like a lot of freelance assignments. Like when you know things are wrapping up, you give out a lot of like it'll be fun.
Thank you.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that one, big man.
Yeah.
Thank you, big dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real, man. Holy shit.
Do a couple of those. Yeah.
But yeah, so and that Road Atlanta race, that's a 10-hour race. And in between there's a whole kind of season of races that vary in duration, and also in the types of venues, right? So I feel like this is kind of an interesting thing to talk about too, because it's not just it's not just one type of track, right? You have a mix of kind of traditional what we call road courses. So it's kind of like, you know, a twisty up and down road course that's usually out in the countryside somewhere, like Watkins Glen is an example of that. Road Atlanta is definitely an example of that. There's Road America in Wisconsin, kind of similar deal. Then you have these kind of big, you know, like Daytona, big speedway that's set up with a road course within the kind of larger speedway, but they're using these really long straights and these high banked turns. They also race at the last several years and are continuing to at Indianapolis, kind of similar deal where they you know, part of the track they use the big speedway track, and then there's an infield track that they are on part of the time that's more kind of set up like a road course, more twisty, tight turns. Then you have street courses, right? So as distinct from a road course, a street course is it's like in a city, in an urban environment. They shut down some streets and erect some barriers and concrete, skirts and stuff, and have these cars going through like downtown Long Beach or Detroit, where it's like super hairy because there is like absolutely zero runoff room, right? Like the edge of the track. I mean, most of the time, the edge of the track, there's some grass, there's some runoff room, so you can kind of like cut some corners. Or if you lose control, you're going to skid across the grass or into like a gravel pit or whatever before you hit a wall or whatever other obstacles there are to hit. But yeah, street courses, there's none of that. There's just like there's the track, and then there's a concrete curtain
Barrier.
at the side of the
Yeah.
track, and it's completely unforgiving, and so that stuff can be super hairy. I've never actually been to a street course race. You have
Just
though,
been,
Rory, right?
yeah, I've just been to Detroit, which is a great time. The road course races tend to not be very good races as far as like especially in Detroit, like just because they're on
street courses. You mean? Yeah.
yeah, they're just like they're narrow. Sorry, did I
Right.
say road course? Yeah,
Yeah.
the courses are narrow, and so like it's hard to pass, and the cost of fucking up is so high that like
Right.
everyone's kind of a little cautious. So it tends to be like really like about qualifying more so than other, like in a 24-hour race like Daytona. It's like anything can happen, like the cars that qualify first might break down or whatever. Like there's just a million different potential outcomes. And like in the street course thing, it's like, wow, like guys who qualify towards the front of the pack generally finish towards the front of the pack because there's just not a lot of opportunities to do anything differently. But the big advantage obviously is you get like in an environment like Detroit, you get to be in Detroit, which is awesome. There's like all the great places to eat and stay and hang out and like fan experiences. And then you get to see these incredible cars like really, really close. And like there's great access generally in IMSA. And Detroit is not different from a regular IMSA race in that respect. And then like you're just right on top of the action, and like you get to get a really like clear view of what's happening, and it's super fun. So like while the quality of the race is not what you'd get at like a Daytona or Watkins Glen, the experience is really good. Like it's super fun. It's just like it's not going to be the most interesting race on the calendar generally.
Right. I would think that the sound just echoing off of like the
It's
side
incredible.
of tall buildings would
Yeah.
would actually be
Yeah.
like a pretty unique part of that too. I mean, is that
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, it's like, Detroit used to be on Belle Isle, which like
Right.
is like a little island in the middle of the Detroit River, beautiful public park, and they moved it a couple years ago to downtown, which again like reduced the I guess quality of the actual course, but you have like these 200-mile-an-hour cars ripping through downtown like right next to the Rensen, and it's you can get up on top of parking garages and look down on the cars, and like there's a million places too where like even if you're not a paid spectator to just catch a glimpse or hear the cars go by, it's like a good crazy party environment. And it's like I don't know, it's super fun, and there's something about like it's like F1 people say the same thing where it's like, okay, Monaco is not the best race on the calendar, but it's like, yeah, it's fucking Monaco though. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's
Yeah.
a thing where it's like there are race cars in your town, like
right?
like
Totally.
in downtown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when, like I know, when I'm staying at my place in Monaco, it's such a pleasure to see any form of racing on the streets.
Of course, yeah.
My staff loves it. They go crazy.
Rory, with
I'm usually just anchored in the harbor, on my mega yacht.
Yeah.
your mansion boat.
But I mean, it's so rare to be able to watch racing from my yacht. I mean, it really is. It's a unique.
Just a few times a year, really. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're gonna say something, Maddie?
Yeah. Rory, you guys with Auto Week got to talk to some of the drivers about doing street courses and stuff. Like, do you know, kind of like gut check what some of their feel is about doing those versus the road courses? Like, is it less?
I mean,
fun
they hate
for
them.
them?
They
Yeah.
hate them. That's like a.
Yeah.
That's a pretty like. It's like one of the fun things about having a race in the city. They used to have F1 in the city in Detroit, and they have obviously they ran Indy cars and sports cars in Detroit for a long time. But one of the best parts about that experience anywhere, not just in Detroit, but the drivers will come and they'll do interviews with the local press, and the press will be like, what do you think about driving in Detroit? Like, because they don't know, most of the time, don't know anything about racing. And they'll just be like,
Right.
What's the course like? And the drivers would be like, it sucks. It's exhausting. And it beats you up. And like, it's not a surface that's made for racing. It's a street. It's like a poorly maintained street in most cases. And the walls are really scary because they're right there and there's nowhere to run off, and we hate it. It's like, I mean, better, the Penske drivers who are better media trained will be like, but we love being downtown and we love the culture. And I got my Coney dog, and here are my 3 favorite restaurants from downtown that you should go visit or whatever.
Penske perfect,
like,
baby. Get out there for the people.
The overall sentiment is always like, it sucks. It's terrible. We hate it. We circled this on the calendar and we're like, no, thank you. But
the flip side of that, though, is that with the road courses, especially the road courses that are part of the IMSA circuit, as compared to the World Endurance Championship, which is the kind of, like we say, the international, mostly European based, although they have races in Japan and in the Middle East and South America as well. But the World Endurance Championship, which is WEC, is kind of under the FIA umbrella, part of the same kind of sanctioning body that does Formula One, and their track standards are, it's the same standard that they use for Formula One, right? So it's these tracks, mostly, like with the notable exception of Le Mans, which is partially public roads that are closed off for that event, but the parts of that are permanent track kind of have to adhere to these regulations as well. You have like really wide runoff areas where it's kind of like a racetrack that's painted onto like almost like a parking lot, just like this kind of ocean of asphalt. Whereas the road courses in the U.S., because they're almost all much older, like they date to like the 40s, 50s, 60s, whenever, but they're way more just kind of traditional and old school, where there's there's not as much runoff. There are trees, there's fences, and it's like it's just a more kind of just old school and just cooler looking and feeling vibe. And the drivers love these tracks because like for the most, Road Atlanta, Road America, Watkins Glen, everybody fucking loves these tracks because they're fast, demanding, challenging tracks, but they're also in like these really beautiful kind of bucolic settings. And there are real fucking consequences, for going off, things have been made safer now where, you're less likely to get killed, than you would have been, 50 years ago. or even 20 or 30 years ago. But it's still there are still you can't take stupid risks, or if you do, you you run the risk of incurring like race ending consequences. And so it's like a lot of European drivers or drivers who compete in both the WEC and in IMSA, like they love the IMSA stuff. They love coming to the US and racing just because of these kind of old school tracks and facilities that haven't been kind of sanitized into just kind of kind of not boredom, but just where everything kind of looks kind of samey and yeah. There's also, I mean, the other track that we haven't mentioned is Sebring, which is also in Central Florida, and that's an old airfield. It's like an old World War II era airfield that it's a 12-hour race, and that has been going on since the 50s. And it's this it's a road course basically on an old airfield. The tarmac is just completely baked, battered, mix of asphalt, concrete, whatever. It's like runways and shit. And so, like the way everybody talks about Sebring is that like they race there for 12 hours, and that's the second race of the year after Daytona for 24. And Sebring is generally regarded as the more punishing race of those two, even though it's half as long. But just the absolute beating that track doles out to cars and drivers alike.
There's a good, and I would recommend too, like as another like piece of the primer for like sports car racing. Audi commissioned NFL Films to make 2 movies in the early 2000s about their Le Mans effort,
Wow.
called Truth and 24, and they are obviously a branded Audi propaganda film, but they're fucking awesome. And like,
I've never seen those. That's cool.
oh dude, they're incredible. They're like the footage, and then like, it's so funny, like Jason Statham is the narrator, but it's so funny because it's like Audi was like on this run of like utter dominance at Le Mans for the whole early 2000s.
I mean, the entire 2000s, right? I mean, that was like 12 years of just, I mean, it makes like the Patriots run look like just kind of like a flash in the pan,
Yeah. But it's so funny because, these 2 documentaries have to set up like, well, they're up against some tough odds. It's like, I mean, like I don't follow it that close, but it doesn't look that tough. But they're phenomenal movies. But there's a good portion in those where they talk about Sebring as like the shakedown for Le Mans, because it's like it's so punishing and so hard on the cars. It's like, well, if you can run at Sebring, you'll be fine at Le Mans. And it's like that's true. Like it is awful and brutal on the cars. It's funny too. I remember like talking to John Doonan, who's now running IMSA, when he was running the Mazda team, and I was like, these rougher courses, I was like, for Detroit and Belle Isle and then Sebring, I was like, do you like loosen up the suspension a little bit to like make it more compliant? Like, are you faster that way? And he's like, you'd think so, but we actually have to stiffen it up to run at these more like courses where there are more joints in the road and there are more bumps. You actually run the car stiffer. That's faster counterintuitively, but he's like, the drivers hate it. Like the drivers, because it just, looks like we're frozen.
You're back.
Okay. I mean, every driver that I've heard talk about Sebring,
It's
like,
a magic place.
they fucking love it.
Yeah.
Like they love it because it is so punishing and so just demanding, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they get off on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like these people are like world class sickos. It's like the things that they like versus the things that I might like are pretty
Yeah.
divided.
Yeah.
So, do we want to pick? Go ahead. Where are we?
Oh, well, I was just going to spend a little bit of time just kind of talking about the cars.
Please do.
Yeah, well, let me just do like a brief
Yeah.
kind of just
Oh, like what
description
the overall.
of
Yeah.
just kind
Sure.
of like what the various classes are and the distinctions. And then I also wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the class dynamics in amongst the drivers, because I feel like that is maybe even more interesting part of the story. But yeah, I definitely want to talk about the individual cars as well. So you have a few tiers of classes, with cars. The kind of bottom rung, the slowest cars on the track are GT cars, and these are kind of loosely production based. I mean, there are cars that you would recognize as a car that you have seen in the real world. Like they are based on production cars. So you have things like Porsche 911s, you have Corvettes, you have Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Aston Martins. They are pretty, at this point, heavily. I mean, they're basically special versions of those cars. I mean, they share like the engines and the basic mechanical layout with their road going cousins, but they've been engineered into pretty much pure race cars, where the engines are, if you look at like a Ford Mustang, what they call them GTD cars. If you look at like a Ford Mustang version of these versus like a road going Ford Mustang, like you open the hood on the road car and it's like, oh, here's the engine just like sitting right here, right? If you look at the race car version, it's like the engine is shoved so far down and so far back that it's like it's almost comical that it's
Just
basically
like a Lada, really.
What's that? Yeah, it is
Just
like a
like
Lada.
Lada.
Right? Yes.
Yep.
And also like they have like the entire like fucking front like subframe, like they can take the engine out and then just like pull the entire front end of the car, this subframe, like it just detaches, so you have the firewall of the car that's like, the kind of, where the windshield is, it's the wall between the passenger compartment where the driver sits and the front of the car where the engine is. Like to use a Mustang as an example. Everything forward of that firewall like literally unbolts. Like you can just take the entire fucking front end off. So I mean, if one of these cars has like what looks like a catastrophic accident, where it's just like, oh man, the thing's just like fucking toast, they could actually like bring it back in, pull that off, bolt a new subframe on, and be going again in, I mean, not a insignificant amount of time, but like
In hours.
yeah, like or less, like in a time that just seems like completely bananas. So they look like their road car equivalents, but they're actually like much closer to a purpose-built race car at this point. I mean, this kind of dynamic has fluctuated over the years. We're kind of now like getting to a point where I mean, as they get more specialized like that, the costs go up for manufacturers or participants, for anybody to compete. So anyway, so those are your GT cars. Then above that you have, I mean, the other kind of like larger subgroup is what what are kind of generally referred to as prototype cars. And these are cars that don't look anything like anything that you've seen on driving on the street. they're basically like, imagine like an Indy car or a Formula One car, but with fenders like a full body on top of it, and that's the general idea. That's pretty close to what we're talking about. I mean, these are like, obviously purpose built race cars, um, and but the one thing that is different, and I think this is kind of like a funny, weird, vestigial kind of thing, is that like when people in racing talk about Indy cars or Formula One cars, they'll refer to them specifically as single seaters, as distinct from like sports car prototypes, which, I mean, at this point they're all technically single seaters. There's not a passenger seat in them.
Right.
Yeah.
But they are different from Indy cars and F1 cars because, those cars, the driver is like, they're right in the middle of the
center.
car. Right. They're on the center line. The steering wheel is at the center line of the car. And with sports car prototypes, that's not the case. Like, the driver is still offset a little bit, as if they would have been in a car with two seats. And because these prototypes, they did evolve from kind of road going cars that kind of became more and more extreme and more closer, more like a pure race car. But they still maintain that kind of that offset where the driver's kind of a little bit, and you look at the cabin and it's like, like where the driver sits is just this kind of like little bubble on top of this kind of, wedge shaped flying saucer shape. But like that bubble, the driver is kind of just nudged over to the side, and there's not really enough space for another seat, but where the passenger seat would have been, it's like these days it's kind of like that's where the like battery packs go, because a lot of these cars are hybrids. Most of them. So that's kind of taken the place of the passengers. You have this like kind of heavy electronic ballast. So and then within the prototype kind of larger thing, you have the kind of this intermediate level where in IMSA they're just called LMP2 cars, and they're basically spec racers, meaning that they're all the same. They're all identical. They're pretty much all made by the same manufacturer, which is this French company called Orica. And the people who are running these cars it's a mix of kind of amateur drivers and pro drivers, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then above the LMP2 cars, now you have what in IMSA are now called GTP cars. These are the full factory manufacturer backed kind of top tier class, and where it's all pro drivers, and this is kind of like, this is the flagship of the IMSA brand, and these cars, and it's the thing is, like, over the years this stuff has fluctuated, where sometimes like the GT cars are that's kind of where the action is, and there's maybe only a handful of prototypes that are, only a handful of people who even have the money to bring these a prototype to the grid. Right now it's kind of like, right now the prototype class is the healthiest it's ever been. I think you could say, arguably. You have the manufacturers that you have in the top class right now are Porsche, Cadillac, BMW, Lamborghini, Acura, and coming this year, Aston Martin. So, big names, big money, really cool, just awesome looking cars. And they use we'll get into that part later. That's I was gonna say, like, they're kind of a mix of using like kind of spec chassis. So but yeah, I think that's getting a little that's a rabbit hole we don't have to go down right now. But so that's your basic breakdown. So you got GTPs on top; those are the fastest cars. You got the LMP2s that are prototypes that look pretty similar to the GTPs, but aren't quite as fast. And then you have your GT cars that are recognizable as just kind of like a race car version of a road going car. Anything to add to that, or should we talk about coolest cars, our favorites?
Yeah, I mean,
now?
I think that's pretty much that's a good summary, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think one thing to note too is like and I think we maybe have talked about this in the past, but I think like the way that these series work is like they will come upon a formula, meaning like a rule set of like how cars are going to be built that is like affordable and approachable and exciting to manufacturers. And manufacturers are like, yeah, sure, we can afford to do that. We feel like we're getting a good value out of it. I can sell this to my boss or whatever. And everybody gets in. And the big enemy, and I think we have talked about this, but the big enemy of this is like the creep of costs and the expense of being competitive. Eventually, most of the time, someone at the car companies is going to say like, this is too expensive. This isn't returning what we needed to return from a marketing value standpoint. So we need to get out, and then like the dominoes will start falling and shrink. But like right now, the formula and the value proposition for the individual companies is like as close to perfect, I think, as you could imagine it being. Like it is like
they've worked out a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it like and the result of that is you have this incredible diverse field. Like I can remember watching Daytonas in the early 2000s where it's like I don't recognize or care about any of these.
Yeah, same.
Teams, really. You know, and like looking back, it's like now I know a lot of the people, and it's like I wish I would have known them. You know what I mean? Like would have been different. But like I can remember being like, I don't fucking care about this. Like there's a reason why this is on whatever the Ocho.
Yeah.
But that is not the case now. It's really like Peter said, it's at the peak of like any racing series, I think.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
means we get cool cars. We get so many cool cars.
Do you want to talk about the cars, or should we talk about the drivers and then loop back to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I think like I think in IMSA for me, it's like I do like a lot of the drivers, and I get excited about certain guys like who are big personalities or who seem cool or whatever. I talked to Felipe Nasser when he was the Cadillac driver. We were at the CT5V launch at VIR, and like I am like my big thing at those things is like going out with the pros, because it's like it's fun for me to drive, obviously, and it's fun to get better over the course of the day driving a car, but like what's really fun is to go with a actual like trained killer and sit in the right side of the car and like realize how shitty you are and how shitty everybody you know is at driving.
Yeah.
And like I was leaving that event at the end of the day, and it was like everybody was getting like their cool down laps in. I took my helmet off and like took my Hans device off, and Felipe Nasser was walking out, and either one of the engineers said something, or I said something, and I was like, oh man, I would have, I didn't realize you were here. I would have loved to go out with you or whatever. And he's like, no, let's go. And I was like,
oh hell yeah.
I was like, no, I was like, you already have your helmet off. I got my helmet off. Like, we could just have a beer afterwards or whatever and talk. And he's like, no, let's go. And I was like, all right. Like, and he's like, goes to the engineer. He's like, can you guys get me a car? He's like, I wanted to do one more. And I was like, it's like this guy lives on a track. He doesn't. No,
that's the thing. That's what's so crazy about that. That's so awesome.
And he was like, yeah, let's go. And like took me around at VIR, which is a very fast track. And like when it's me driving, there's like chicanes that they put out to slow everything down, and he would just blow completely through them. Like, we're not doing that. Like we're going at the regular. Awesome. And it was so fun and so cool. And then afterwards, he's a huge bass fisherman. He's from Brazil, I think.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's like he was like spent maybe 20 minutes showing me pictures of like peacock bass on his phone and like was like just a super cool guy. It's like one of the guys like you kind of like very easy. It would be easy for a guy like me to hate him. He's like incredibly handsome, obviously massively talented. Be easy to be jealous of the guy, but he's just super cool. And it's like, so yeah, there are guys who are like you can kind of relate to, and you're like, oh man, they're super cool. You can't help but root for them. So there are definitely like people I like and root for. But to me, like this type of racing is like this is about the hardware and it's about the car, especially because it's like it's very like like there's teams and there's not a single driver in each car or whatever. Like to me, it's like what is the most compelling machine on the track. But all that being said, let's talk about our favorite drivers first.
Well, I don't even want to talk about favorite drivers. I just want to talk about the dynamics. Well, the dynamics of just the kind of the pipeline and the different types of drivers.
Oh, I see. Sure.
Because I feel like this is the part that it kind of takes a long time as a spectator to kind of catch on to because nobody talks about it. But I think it's one of the most interesting parts of it. And that is that, like we talk about this being multi-class racing, right? Which everybody understands to be like different classes of cars, but it is also multi-class racing in the kind of Marxian sense, right? because you have drivers, well, the origins of IMSA go back to, I mean, sports car racing in the United States and around the world, up through, I would say, like the 50s. This was a hobby for fucking rich people, right? This was a pastime of aristocrats. And in this country, you had the Sports Car Club of America, the SCCA, which still exists, still around, and it's like that's amateur racing. That's if any one of us three wanted to just get into, I mean, there's obviously there's other venues now as well, but that's it. That's an avenue for just ordinary Joe to get into amateur club racing, and the SCCA was founded. I mean, it's like the guys who started this, they were like rich sportsmen, and the amateur part of it, which to us sounds like, oh well, that's cool. Like you want to maintain that the purity of the sport, right? You don't want to introduce kind of commercialism into it, because that would taint it. But the thing is, what that kind of insistence on the pure amateurism did was it kept it exclusive to rich guys, right? And you had kind of like this kind of competing idea that's like, well, what if this guy comes in who is like a really talented driver but doesn't have the money to field his own car? What if he got like a sponsorship from like a tire company or whatever, or just like a local business, and they're going to underwrite his thing? Well, it's like, well, now they're paying him, and he's no longer an amateur, right? So that kind of disqualifies him from doing this. And so kind of paradoxically, the introduction of commercial elements was kind of like a democratizing force in the world of racing, because it opened up the field to
It wasn't just like I bought a new Ferrari and I'm going to go race it.
exactly
Like
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do they call them? Gentleman drivers, I think, is the preferred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well,
Lofty sort of title for them.
yeah. So anyway, so IMSA was kind of like a reaction. I mean, it was kind of like it was people who within SCCA who were frustrated with these limitations, where it's like, well, why shouldn't this guy be able to do this too? And even though he's getting funding, from outside or whatever, and so there was this schism within the kind of sports car racing world, and IMSA kind of grew out of that, and so the kind of the legacy of that is that now in IMSA you have a mix of at the top tiers, right? It's like in your GTP cars, or your GTD Pro class. I mean, because that's the thing, is the GT cars, there's actually two subclasses within that. There's GTD Pro, which is mostly factory backed teams. Meaning when I say factory, I mean like, the manufacturers, Chevrolet is writing the checks to fund this Corvette program, or Ford with the Mustang, whatever. But these drivers, these are professional drivers. These guys are hired hands who do this for a living. They've kind of ascended to the highest kind of echelon of their profession, and so that's what they're doing. But then you have this other stuff going on where in LMP2 and also in the lower GTD non-pro class, where you have amateurs, like guys who are not professional drivers, who are rich guys, who some of them there's kind of two ways this works, and one of them is like really rich guys who come in and just say, I'm going to run a whole team, right? There's a team that the team that won the GTD title this year, which is the Rexy Porsche GTD Pro,
yeah.
I guess. The Porsche that is dressed up like a Tyrannosaurus Rex that everybody loves. It's like, it's the kids love it, and it's super popular. It's got big toothy grin across the front, and it's green, and it's a dinosaur. It's a race car. It's a dinosaur.
You got Roxy now too, right? Which is the purple one?
The pink
one.
Yeah. Well, no. Spike is the there's
Spike.
There's the LMP2. They also run an LMP2 class car that is Spike the Dragon. Well, why? Wait, how? Now all these other cars, they all have big sponsor stickers on the side of them. How is this car that? It I mean, it has like little small ones, but it's basically running this whole dinosaur livery. Don't they have to have like a major sponsor? Well, not if the guy who is running the team is a billionaire.
Yeah.
Who's like a straight up fucking billionaire. And that's this guy, PJ Hyatt, who what was his thing? Do you remember, Rory? We talked about this at Daytona last year.
It's a software.
Is it GitHub or something? Was that
GitHub,
his thing?
Yeah.
Which I don't even know what that is.
It's a software repository place where people upload their code, and like people can make branches of different programs and like upload them, and it's like a massive thing for software.
Okay. Yeah. So this guy made $1 billion fucking doing this shit, and decided he wanted to go racing, and discovered he's pretty good at it, and a few years ago he said, well, I'm just gonna start this whole team where I'm just gonna pay for everything out of pocket, and that's what, the team is called AO Racing. So it's him, and he got this other guy, Gunnar Jeanette, who's kind of a long standing pro driver, and they kind of partnered together, and they've been very successful, obviously. So that's an example of like, I mean, he still drives. He competes. He doesn't drive the Porsche anymore. He's driving the LMP2 car. Then you have this other thing where it's like guys who are rich guys, but maybe not necessarily billionaires, but like, multi-millionaires, guys who've
Normal
got like,
rich,
normal
They got
rich
walking
guys
around money.
who've got more money than they know what to do with, and they want to go racing. And the way that this works is there are whole teams like in GTD and LMP2, where these teams basically exist to offer rides to wealthy sportsmen, right? Mostly men. There's a handful of amateur women drivers, but so these people basically, they write the check to buy themselves a seat in this car, and so it'll be them, and then they're paired with pro drivers who haven't yet, who are kind of like lower tier pro drivers. I mean, very capable and good drivers, but not like the cream of the crop. And so it's almost like it's like a service industry kind of thing, where it's like, it's, the thing is, I think about like those guys that go and climb Mount Everest.
Yeah.
They just pay a bunch of money and they go and climb Mount Everest, but really what they're doing is they're getting escorted up Mount Everest, like, by these entire teams of, like, Sherpas or Tibetan guys who are kind of helping them up to the top. It's kind of a similar thing, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be a race car driver. And the thing is, and it's not to discredit them. I mean, there's a number of, like, really talented drivers who go ahead.
I think some of it, like, what's interesting about it is, like, racing is super expensive and hard to get into. Like, you kind of, like, to be a world-class driver who gets paid to drive, you have to start when you're like 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe five or six. And most people just don't have that either. Like, even if they do have the money, they don't have, like, their parents don't have the wherewithal to be like, I'm putting him in a cart at 6 years old or whatever.
Right.
So, like, some of these people come into money later in life, or they somehow can afford this all of a sudden, and they're mid 30s or 40s or whatever, and they discover, like, I'm pretty good at this. And it's like, it's a very weird dynamic in sports. Like, it's not going to happen in the NBA, where it's like, oh man, I have recently discovered that I can shoot a 3-pointer or whatever. Like, it would be like, trying out for the Detroit Lions and being like, oh fuck, I made it. Like, or like if you could buy your way onto the team. But it is a really weird dynamic where, like Peter said, like, some of them turn out to actually be pretty decent at it. And I think, like, racing is one of those things that you can learn how to do to a higher degree than other sports. Like, there's no amount of practicing, taking batting practice where I'm ever going to be able to hit a fastball in the major leagues ever, no matter what happens. Like, I could learn how to drive a race car at a level that is, like, not going to get me killed. Probably wouldn't be successful, but, like, you could learn how to be a non-dangerous entity in an IMSA field, and many people have. But it is, like, it's a very strange dynamic where it's like, the races are televised. You are for all intents and purposes, a professional athlete, doing something that, like, you didn't train your whole life for, right? Like, you just,
well, and the difference is between those guys and the actual, like, top tier professional driver or any of the pros. I mean, it's like, it's not an unathletic. I mean, you think about it.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, how good a shape do you have to be in to drive a car?
Extremely good shape.
Keep your head up in a turn with that much horizontal force. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, look at them. Like, they all have, their fucking necks are gigantic, right? Because it's just like, and the conditioning, it's like these are world class fucking athletes, the shape that
Yeah.
you have to be in to do this. But it's always very clear, just like looking at them, because it's like, here in among, amidst these people who are very, obviously, highly, like highly sculpted, trained athletes. And
Yeah.
here's a kind of like pudgy, 50 something guy. It's
Dentist.
like,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but they get in the car. Their job is generally just don't fuck
Yeah.
up, because, and the thing is, like in the classes that they're competing, whether they're the other cars, the other teams that they're competing against, they each have one of these drivers. They're bronze rated drivers. There's different, like, kind of, they give them a kind of medal certifications. So like you've got gold, silver, bronze drivers, and bronze basically is kind of shorthand for just somebody who's paying their way to
Yeah.
to get in. But it's usually pretty clear who those people are. But yeah, their job is their each team has one of those drivers, and their job when they get in the car, because everybody, there's kind of like, there are minimum time limits, so everybody has to spend at least this much time in the car. And those guys' job is just to, like, get in. You don't have to be the fastest on the track. We're not expecting you to be. It's just like,
don't
just
fuck it up.
exactly, don't
Yeah.
fuck it up. And if you lose some spots, that's fine. We'll get it back, because because Johnny GoPro is waiting his turn. Yeah. But that part of it is really fascinating to me. And yeah, it's just the mix of, and the thing is, like it's funny, because you have these guys who are like billionaires, or like, just, if not billionaires, just like insanely wealthy people who can pay to do this as kind of a lark or as a hobby. And then you have like these insanely talented, best in the world
Ringers. Yeah.
people, who, I mean, they're making good money, but they're not making like billionaire money. They're not even making
Yeah.
like fucking NFL money or anywhere
Yeah.
close to that, right? They're working class professional athletes, and so all of those people being on a racetrack at the same time, I just feel like it's a really interesting kind of class dynamic situation. These things kind of unfolding, and lots of narratives, lots of threads, to
It is it is like fascinating, the, like you said, the amount of wealth that is like at an IMSA race in any given weekend, from fans to like team owners to whatever. Like, some of the richest people on the planet are spending their money going racing, and then like there are guys who are mechanics, and like who,
Yeah.
what I mean, like
yeah.
who are normal middle class type jobs, and like it's a very wild. I mean, and that's one of the cool things. Not cool things. One of the interesting things about actually being at a race at IMSA versus like, Formula One or NASCAR
Yeah.
even, or whatever. It's like in IMSA, like you can go walk up and talk to any of these people, like as a fan, like not as a journalist, not as like a super fan or whatever. Like you can, if you have a ticket to the race, if you are on premises, like you can go talk to them and go check out their shit and like walk around, like you're right there. And it's a very like strange, at least for me, it's a very strange, it's a strange environment, because like you don't see that level of like mix usually, you know what I mean, like that level of like, we're all here doing the same shit, like we're all in the same room, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like every other event like that, it's like well, there's a VIP area, and then there's like the regular people area, and then there's like the
Right.
talent area. And I'm like, no, this is
Yeah.
all
No, it's all
just
together.
open for everybody. Yeah.
I mean, I've, we've joked about this before, but it's like I've taken selfies with fucking,
Bertie Habsburg.
Ottoman royalty,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
with the billionaire child of the Trump's, of Trump's like largest, donor.
Well, former largest donor.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Step down, Miriam. But yeah, I mean, it's like in it just the paddock at an IMSA race, and I'm not there in like any kind of like journalistic, or even if I am, it's like, my access is the same as everybody else's. You just fucking see these people and walk up to them, and it's like, yay. Yeah, but it's also the case that like with any of these teams that we talk about, it's like there's the drivers, but there's huge support staff. Like for every team, you've got like, a dozen mechanics,
Race
you've
engineers.
got exactly race engineers, like team managers, whatever, all their kind of support staff. It's there's and these people, like, these are fucking working for a living people, and it's like the mechanics, dude.
Yeah.
Like the hours are insane. I mean, I've talked about it, like it's it's like being a fucking roadie on tour. It's
Yeah.
they're the same people, it's the same guys, except they sleep even less, and and like they're making a living, but man, it's fucking intense. It's crazy shit.
Yeah.
But it's like all that kind of just disappears in the context of this kind of shared endeavor of just everybody trying to go out and do their best on track.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's like, it's one of those things, like I will tell, like, I've said this to a million people, and I'll say it on the podcast too, but it's like, if you go to an IMSA race and do not have a good time, like you're
Something's
not a
wrong.
human being. Like,
Get help.
I've never taken anybody, which actually that's something I should try this year, is going to an IMSA race and see how I do. But it's like, because I've found myself not having a good time in some very unlikely situations
Hey, man.
this year.
But
No, I'm joking. But what I'm saying is, it is like universally, every time I've ever taken someone to one of these things, they're like, holy shit, that's the coolest thing I've ever fucking done. And it's like, they may or may not have the wherewithal to like do it again and like become a real fan or become like follow the sport or whatever. But everybody who goes is like, that was incredible. Like that was an unbelievable experience. Which is like, I don't know. It's like, you have to go.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this pod, you have to find a way to get yourself to an IMSA race. It's just so cool.
Cool as shit.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm psyched. Baby's
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
IMSA race.
Yeah. So as we talked about way at the beginning of this, Rory mentioned the Roar before the 24, which is happening in, what is it? It's the weekend of the
Middle weekend in January.
Yeah.
It's the 17th and 19th.
yeah, 17th, 18th, 19th. So that's kind of like, it's the weekend before the 24-hour race, and at Daytona, and it's just like a kind of 2 or 3 day shakedown session. It's the first time that you see the 2025, the cars in their kind of 2025 liveries, how they're going to be dressed up, and the Aston Martin, I think notably we should point out, just because we've been talking about that, is not debuting at Daytona. Is that
No.
that's
Yeah, but it's Sebring.
they're holding it off until Sebring.
Yeah.
But
It's not uncommon that late January race always seems to sneak up on a couple teams. So they're like,
yeah, well, and also
Yeah.
just kind of starting off your racing career with a 24-hour race is pretty daunting.
Yeah, it took them a while for that new
Um,
Lamborghini to debut at a race too last year, right? Was that the
It was
same thing?
same
Yeah.
thing. Yep. Yeah, uh they launched
There's
it
also
at
like
Sebring here.
a huge gap between Daytona. So like the first race is in January and the next race is in March.
Right.
And so like launching in March is like, okay, then you're a race every week or weekend roughly for the rest of the year versus like you know, going and then waiting 3 months for your next opportunity at the track.
Yeah. But yeah, it's cool stuff, and yeah, like we were saying, like it really is like right now. I mean, this episode is too long as it is. There's a lot of reasons for this. We could do a part 2 where we talk more.
Talk about the cars.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about some of our favorite cars, favorite drivers, because that's the thing. There's so many fucking like fun, colorful personalities, whether drivers, team owners, various people in the paddock and around the sport who are just make it really fun. And the cars themselves, the hardware, it's spectacular and awesome. And there's more variety. I mean, this is shit that I discovered that I got into in high school in the 1980s, which was kind of the last golden era of IMSA, and it was great, but it was also like totally dominated by Porsche. Like, you know, it was kind of like you had Porsche and kind of everybody else, and so I just rooted for everybody else. But right now it's like there is more in terms of just like the variety of cars on the track, the health of the fields, just like the number of teams, and the other thing that we haven't talked about at all, and I'll just mention it very quickly, is part of the reason that the competition is one of the things that enables this level of variety and also competitiveness is this thing called balance of performance, or BOP, and as Marshall Pruitt, who's reporter who covers this stuff and really great writer and dude, but he refers to it as BOP-ness. the BOP-ness that goes on in the series, and but what that is just kind of this mechanism, these rules that kind of ensure that keep the car within a kind of competitive framework, that nobody, like, there are kind of artificially limited power limits, and you could say, and like lots of people will argue, it's like, well, that's bullshit, this is not real racing, and it's like, and you can make a case, sure, that's true, but I don't care. I mean, it's the thing is, like, if you didn't have that, you would just have a handful of cars. They would all look the same because there's just one solution for the problem. Right. And the way what BOP enables is you can have a big heavy front engine Ford Mustang competing against like a small nimble mid engine McLaren or a Ferrari. And they're on equal footing, or like a big BMW against, so it's like you have these cars that have like wildly different layouts, wildly different types of engines, and even like up to like the top classes, like in GTP, it's like, I mean, you have Cadillac running a big honking, normally aspirated V8, versus like other teams running smaller V8s or V6s with twin turbos
Mazda
on them.
When they're running a 2-liter four-cylinder.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
And it is too, like, BOP is an essential, like, I was talking about cost earlier, but like that is also the other part of the equation of like getting manufacturers is manufacturers, if they enter a race series like IMSA and find they can't win, they'll quit.
Right.
Yeah.
And like whatever, that's not the most noble whatever like way to operate, but it's also like if you're the guy who's selling a race program to your boss who's the CMO or the CEO of a major car company, and you just go out and get smoked every weekend, it's a really hard sell. Like it's a really like,
oh, totally.
They want to know you're going to be competitive.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of the same as just like a salary cap in the NFL. You know, it's like, it's just a way of just kind of leveling the field and having, you know, at least the potential for parity. You know, where it's like everybody's got a shot at this, and the variety of just kind of layouts and you know the way that different manufacturers go about kind of solving that problem, but using like lots of different solutions. What that does is it makes it interesting from race to race because certain cars will be better suited for certain tracks. The way that they, you know, use their tires is going to be different. And so, you know, like one car might, you know, be a total ringer, you know, at Sebring, but is going to be totally unsuited for, you know, for Indianapolis or whatever. And I feel like that element, it gives everybody a shot. And like you say, I mean, that's the reason that we have so many manufacturers involved and so much variety and such a healthy field. And so, you know, it's like people can bitch all they want about BOP, but it's the reason that this series has blown up so dramatically in the last 5 years. And it's like the sky's the limit. So, and it's great racing. That's the other thing is like, it's entertaining racing. Like,
yeah. That's the other, like, if you got into racing from, watching Drive to Survive and sort of watching Formula One, it is a genuine novelty to watch like American racing and be like, I don't know who's going to win. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
sometimes up until the last lap,
stuff can happen.
Yeah. It's way more relatable as a sport. I think like it, you know, like it's like getting into Formula One, and I know it's been better recently, but getting into Formula One is like, here's why you have to be excited about your team finishing 11th or 7th or whatever. Like that's a huge, like such a weird cultural thing for Americans to understand. It's like, you know, like fans of a race team being like, yeah, fuck yeah, we got 6th place again, you know, like, and like the driver like pounding his fist on the wheel, like pumping his fist, like, yeah, we got 8th, you know, like such a foreign concept. You don't have to learn any of that stuff to like IMSA. Your person may win the race at any given race, especially if you pick one of the drivers we're going to tell you about in the next episode.
Well, happy New Year, fellas. We're going to make it a good one.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And happy New Year to everyone listening. And
I hope that you're able to stay tired in the new year.
That's right.
Stay tired, everybody.
Yeah. Stay tired, friends.